What is your story of how you kind of got sucked into the space?
If you combine the experiences of distributed systems and security and encryption, it's about as close as you can get to blockchain technology.
This is more of, like you said, marketing towards getting people to come build for you. Is that right?
Because there's one aspect of it where you want people to join you on your mission and contribute to building out the functional protocol layer. It's all digital, but yet I think the delta is the same as Blockbuster to Netflix.
It's an incentive to say I have access, I'm special, you're not.
Yeah, see, we told you. Centralized systems are a scam. Exclusivity, I think, is a big part of it.
Like a top fan badge or something.
We might continue to see evolution taking place.
Crypto influencers and the public and regulation, how does all that fit?
Regulation has a lot to do right now with preventing use cases that are more financial in nature.
God forbid it's a holiday weekend and you make a payment on a Friday. You won't see it clear till the next Friday.
I think we'll start to see the evolution of applications that go up against incumbents and start to eat their lunch a little bit.
In this episode, I speak with Director of Marketing at Hedera, Brady Gentile. We discuss his journey into the blockchain space, his personal opinions on the challenges of marketing in the crypto space, emerging business models from new technologies, and how he sees the onboarding of the masses playing out. This was a really fun conversation for me, and I hope you enjoy the episode. So, Brady Gentile, welcome to Metallicus Live. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
So let's start off with some chronological surface level questions, if you will. What were you interested in pre-crypto? And then what is your story of how you kind of got sucked into the space?
Yeah, so my background initially was in distributed systems. I worked as an open source developer community manager for a company called DataStax. And DataStax was an enterprise version of an open source NoSQL database platform called Cassandra. It was a database that spun out of Facebook, and learned a lot about distributed systems and technology in that role, and started to take on a product marketing job at that organization. After that, I worked for the company Cloudflare for a few years and focused on various security aspects of the web, and learned a lot about security and encryption at my time there. And then if you combine the experiences of distributed systems and security and encryption, it's about as close as you can get to blockchain technology. And a manager from the first job that I had, he had started a consulting business and ended up consulting a company called Hedera at the time, and was looking for people to join him when he was asked to become CMO there. And so I ended up joining and working with him. And this was about 5 years ago.
Had you heard of anything to do with crypto or blockchain previous to that?
Yeah, so this would have been around 2018. I had heard about Bitcoin at the time. There were some engineers at the first company that I worked at that were very keen on it, but it was in such a sort of nascent stage. And they would try to explain that to me, and I was interested in it, but never did enough research early on. And then as Ethereum emerged and you had this programmability layer that came into play, it became very clear that blockchain technology and Web3 was going to be a foundational infrastructure for our financial future, and became more interested in it at that time. I had started researching smart contracts and was very curious about the space in general. And I think just got very lucky that someone had reached out. My manager from a previous job had reached out and had this opportunity to be able to go all in on the space, and so jumped in at that time.
When it comes to, I would say specifically, I guess, marketing in crypto, what are specific challenges that you wouldn't see? And I mean, I don't even know, should we call it traditional marketing?
Yeah, I mean, it's still traditional marketing in a sense. I feel like at the end of the day, you're a technology marketer. For for the organization that I work for, and for I think most crypto organizations that have emerged, the marketing that you're doing is infrastructure marketing. So you're targeting developers and architects and people who are technical, because those people are the ones that are creating that future state that we envision for Web3. And uh, and so from the perspective of, identifying the needs of developers and creating messaging and trying to understand their articulated and unarticulated needs, I think a lot of that foundational marketing work stays the same. What I think is very different, though, is that most of these platforms are open. They're open platforms. So in many cases, anybody can go and purchase a cryptocurrency token that's related to the network. They can use that token to pay for transaction fees. They don't have to tell anybody who they are in order to start building and deploying applications. And so, rather than, previously you would market to customers and prospective customers, and you would know who these people are and have a relationship with them. I think it's a little bit different now because anybody can go and build on the network. And so it's not necessarily a relationship that you have with a customer. As if it's a customer, it's more of like it's a developer that is in the community of developers that are building these different types of applications, and you form more of a customer success type relationship with them rather than maybe a business relationship with them, as if they're, signing a contract quarterly.
Got it. So this is more of, like you said, marketing towards getting people to come build for you, as opposed to like, I already have a product, I'm selling it to you. Is that right?
In a sense. So I think you're identifying something that's interesting. Is there's one aspect of it where you want people to join you on your mission and contribute to building out the functional protocol layer. And those people are, considered open source contributors. And then you have a larger number of folks that are actually using those tools and that infrastructure to build applications that are business facing or consumer facing. And and you want to have a strong degree of both. And in many cases, there's overlap between the two. A lot of people who are building applications on it and trying to serve the needs of their customers, they have requirements or ideas of how the technology can evolve in order to satisfy the needs of their application and ultimately of their end users. And so they'll become contributors. They'll go into the code base and they'll say, hey, we'd love to have this functionality. They'll, in many cases, submit proposals. They'll dig into the actual code and submit pull requests and help with its evolution. Sometimes it's not even code necessarily. Sometimes it's just standards. So the idea of token standards and having everyone within an ecosystem for a specific protocol or network aligned to those standards is really important, and they help shape that.
Quick break, guys. We hope you're enjoying the show. Did you know that Hedera's native asset HBAR is available to trade on MetalPay? MetalPay is the easiest and safest way to buy, sell, and trade crypto using your debit or credit card. Expanding your digital asset portfolio has never been this easy. Download MetalPay today on iOS or Android and start using cryptocurrency the easy way. Now let's get back to the show. I want to talk about that line between, because to me, crypto has this ethos of like, even it's in your bio in Twitter, like shit posting, right? So we have shit posting
Yeah.
and degen and rug pulls. And like, how does that fit with wanting to eventually onboard the masses? I see it as almost like a taboo. Like in the past, you're trying to get a corporate job, you have tattooed face, probably not going to happen, right? And so
Right.
like what's more likely, if in a theoretical world the masses are onboarded, is it more likely that the crypto ethos educates them and says shit posting is just part of the ethos, or is it more likely that it matures and that kind of fades away?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the way that I like to think about the space There's a great article by Chris Dixon of A16Z, who leads up their crypto division, where he states that emerging technologies always end up looking like a toy at first, and they always end up underserving user needs. And that's always been the case through the evolution of emerging technologies over and over and over again. Video games, the internet, the personal computer. It's always this core group of counterculture actors that are very brilliant visionaries that are trying to create the future. And I think that that's what we're seeing in how you're describing these sort of um, degen personalities that transpire in the space. The way I like to describe it is, today you have monkey pictures and sushi tokens and dog themed coins. And it's really, really easy to dismiss those as toys. Um, and because that's what they are. They're attracting interest, they're attracting capital, they're fun, they're engaging, they get people to utilize the technology. But underlying those toys that are easily dismissed are incredible innovations like automated market making, um, like token standards, um, decentralized exchanges. There's so many technologies underlying it that are foundational to transforming our financial system in the future. But today it just looks the way that it does, and slowly we're starting to see adoption of these standards as they mature. So I think the best example right now is the NFT ecosystem. You saw Bored Ape Yacht Club emerge, a number of other projects that have received a lot of capital and interest and have helped shape and evolve the NFT space. And as it came to maturity, there's enough of that to where enterprises or not just enterprises, but brands and sort of legacy institutions collapse into those standards that are created. So now you have, folks like Starbucks with Starbucks Odyssey. They're utilizing the same standards that are used in Web3 for what people would claim are more degen like projects. They have a Discord that's set up. They have adopted, a very similar community building attitude with their users. And I think that this is a good single example of where we might continue to see evolution taking place. Regulation has a lot to do right now with preventing use cases that are more financial in nature from evolving. But as that's figured out, I think we'll start to see the evolution of applications that go up against incumbents and start to eat their lunch a little bit and force them to have to adopt some of these technologies and business models.
I've seen Nike kind of is in there too, right?
Pretty much every major brand that you look at
Is
today has
somewhere.
some kind of NFT strategy. Yeah.
Um, so I was going through your Twitter, and I want to read just one of the quotes. I have it here. I've always believed Apple is a master at guiding users toward what they believe is the most logical product and UI UX outcome through slow iterations towards a goal. They avoid scaring users. How how can you apply that in the crypto industry?
Yeah. So I think that in Apple's case, they have such mass adoption and a wide variety of different types of customers with different degrees of um, skill sets from like a technological perspective. And so I think they are masters at being able to evolve a user interface and the way that you interact with the technology slowly to not scare people, but they do so with intent towards a direction of where they want them to go. I think a good example of that is like even in just their design. So initially the iPhone started out with a skeuomorphic design principle where the Notes app actually looked like a notepad, or the contacts looked like it felt very real. It felt like a real sort of object. And then they've evolved that over time and gotten people more comfortable with better ways of interacting with the technology through UI changes, but they do it slowly. And I think crypto, um, I feel like today it's incredibly complex to try and adopt crypto. You have wallets, you have your keys that you're managing, you've got, in order to use like a decentralized exchange, you have to do 40 steps to get through supplying liquidity and harvesting and maintaining the pool that you're in and keeping up with the project and all these different things. And, um, I think over time that's going to become simplified. I think there's no world in the future in which mainstream adoption comes from people having 50 steps
Right.
to do that. So obfuscating a lot of that complexity is going to be really important. Um, and I think for a while we'll probably start to have two cohorts of user types. One that's these degen, more maybe technically skilled individuals who want the fine grained control of utilizing DEXs the way that they are today. And then you'll have the emergence of maybe new applications that obfuscate that complexity, and you can use it similarly to Robinhood or a bank application. And ultimately, I think people shouldn't even know that blockchain is on the back end. They shouldn't really be blockchain forward. The user should just be able to experience the value that blockchain brings for whatever it is that they're trying to get done. So, similar to maybe Instagram with a database, like you don't really care what database Instagram uses. You just care that when you click like or you comment on something, that it's there, and people can read the comment, or the person gets the notification that you like it. With blockchain, it's fast settlement. It's having a greater incentive for capital that you get to provide, rather than having maybe a bank act as that intermediary for capital that you're providing and you only get a tiny cut. It's lower fees. I think there's a ton of different benefits to be extracted from blockchain that can be applied to finance that we'll start to see evolve.
I always thought that, like, yeah, when the masses came in, it was kind of going to be through like a stable coin where, like you said, they don't even know they're using the blockchain. And we kind of, PayPal's kind of stepping its foot in there kind of. But yeah, I always thought similarly in that, yeah, it's going to be adopted when it's kind of forced on everyone, because like it's just more efficient in all aspects. So are there any other trends that you see moving forward that you see working, like when it comes to like marketing?
A heavy community focus on marketing is really important. I think that even when you look at the NFT ecosystem and these brands that have moved in and have started to try and cultivate communities and bring consumer engagement and loyalty through these technologies to their end users, they're fostering communities at the end of the day. And, playing around with Starbucks Odyssey, for example, there's so many different things that you can do being part of that community, but it also is a consumption of your time. And so, it's how do you cultivate people that are willing to dedicate their time in this space? How do you make them feel good? How do you make them become brand ambassadors and really care about what's been created there? I see community as being just a incredibly important aspect of this.
Because it's almost like obviously incentives matter too, right? So it's almost like especially now that we're in this weird era of like attention is like its own little currency. It's almost like, yeah,
Right.
creating like micro communities of incentivizing to, like you said, do your like brand ambassadors, have everyone be uh, uh, participating, and the incentive is, yeah, making sure that they get maybe a larger piece, um, and or I guess, because I always like to also think of like if I was on a manipulative evil side, like it's almost like it could also be making them believe that they're getting more of a piece. Maybe that is through give them the social currency, but maybe not as much as the, financial. I don't know, but yeah, it's I agree. Yeah, obviously, yeah. I mean, everyone says community is, such really important, but I like to, yeah, I like to dive deep into like it's not just community, it's incentives, because you can kind of fake a community with
Yeah.
with a bunch of bots.
Right. Yeah. And it's, yeah, that's not, it doesn't end up being a legitimate community when you just have a bunch of bots running around. I think um, more on the lines of like a brand ambassador seems to make sense. It's like reward people for their participation in the community and fostering a certain culture for the community. And I think those incentives don't have to be monetary per se. Some of the best incentives aren't monetary. It's maybe it's a specific admittance as part of an NFT to some kind of virtual event, or some kind of meet and greet, especially if you have, if it's a creators, for example, where it's, someone where there's an individual behind it rather than maybe a brand. It's like more engagement or deeper engagement with the individual or with the brand. Um, and that incentive goes a long way, or swag too. I mean, it's so funny how excited people can get over just a t-shirt.
Yep.
Yeah.
I see that a lot in I dive into the AI stuff. It's almost people like to get access to like beta versions of things before they come out. Like that itself is like um it's an incentive to like say like I have access, I'm special, you're not, kind of thing. But
Right.
this kind,
Exclusivity, I think, is a big part of it. Yeah. If you can create exclusivity, I think um, for people who are dedicated to a brand or an artist or creator or whatever, like if you can give them something that makes them feel like they're part of something that only their few people are part of, and
yeah,
there's benefits to it, then yeah, I think that goes a long way.
like a top fan badge or something. I see a
Yeah.
future where like there's levels of like I'm the number one Beyonce fan or something, like to show proof of that, especially have a digital version of that. I think there's definitely a market somewhere with that. Um, but I want to bring it back. You mentioned it kind of ties into another question I have, in that I guess on the traditional side, you have influencers, right? Where say there's a athletic company who, they pay an influencer to promote their product. Um, uh, Beauty, fashion, athletic greens. Like I just see that everywhere too. But like in your experience, do you have any experience that here's what I'm trying to say is when it gets into the crypto space, it's kind of like eerie, and it's kind of like a big gray area, obviously, because it's, finance is involved and stuff. It's like, and I guess I kind of just wanted to talk about the relationship between, crypto companies, crypto influencers, and like the public and like regulation. How does all that fit? Is there anything you can speak on all of that?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you look at various partnerships that exist between these companies and people who are independent crypto influencers, I think, yeah, you can get quick exposure on something, on a new project or an offering. But I don't think that it lends itself to real long-term adoption. I think that you can make a bunch of noise about something, and you pay them basically. It's a, pay for promotion, but it's not a sustainable approach to actually growing real community, real adoption, real interest. It does make a lot of noise, and maybe you capture a couple people doing it, but the best um, way to approach growth and awareness and adoption and interest is um, taking this user focused approach and community building approach and organic culture forming and trying to be as real as possible with the people that you're engaging. And um, people are always looking for a magic marketing bullet to go to the masses, and all of a sudden everybody's hyped up about something. It just doesn't exist. It's not. Um, it's just not real. You have to do the work, and you have to build a community, and you have to be passionate about the vision and the mission of what you're trying to do, and get people on board, not only from the perspective of user adoption, but also from the perspective of hiring. Everybody should be aligned to a mission and vision that you have, and a cultural tone that you set, and the way that you interact. And I think all of that compounds on itself over and over again over time. And that's just the most important part of it.
When it comes to like regulation, if regulation becomes more clear, like how can that help marketing a crypto company?
Clearer regulation leads to more confidence in adoption of these technologies. I think that especially with them being financial in nature, there's a lot of resistance to exploring and adopting these technologies because of the risk that's involved with it. So if you lose some of that risk by having clear and defined rules, you're going to see much more interest and adoption and usage. So I think regulation is a very positive thing. It's something that's much needed. With it is going to come an exodus of a number of different types of projects and companies and things that aren't playing by those rules or are unable to adapt to those new rules. But it's going to make room and a pathway for this mainstream adoption that I think everybody's been talking about for the last, 7 to 10 years.
Yeah. That apparently the video game was going to bring everyone. There's been so many narratives of what's going to
I
bring.
know.
But I
This is
still,
it. This is the one.
yeah, always, yeah. I still think it's
Yeah.
it's like a stable coin. Like I think that's what brings everyone in. Like when,
Payments is big. Payments is a
yeah,
big one. It's super important. I don't think it's just maybe one stable coin, but I think it's the idea that we should be able to transact and settle payments for low fees instantly, and not have to necessarily use all of the checks that are needed as part of an intermediary going through it. There's definitely value to be had for end users, whether it's like a peer-to-peer payment or business to consumer payments, or even especially business to business payments. There's so much to be had there, but I think, like we were talking about before, it's almost like you shouldn't have to know that that's even happening on the back end. It's going to look just like your current bank account or your current payments platform. It's just going to be faster. It's just going to be cheaper.
yeah,
It's
because
just better.
because God forbid it's a holiday weekend and you make a payment on like a Friday, like you won't see it clear till the next Friday or like middle week.
Exactly.
Like that's because I remember as a kid, I remember being in a grocery store with my mom and seeing someone write a check, and I had a thought like that looks ancient, even though it's still happening. And like that's kind of how I feel about like when payments, even like when you can't settle a payment on a Sunday, like that just seems ancient to me. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
uh, yeah. So we're in agreement that somehow the masses are coming into blockchain. Well, let me ask you this then: do you blockchain and crypto are they separate terms? Are they interchangeable to you?
I see blockchain as an infrastructure technology, more generally, distributed ledger technology as being something that enables cryptocurrency as one use case. But I think that the technology, as a foundation, enables much, much more than just crypto. Um, you have things like decentralized identity. Um, you have, in many cases, networks that are popping up that are acting as like privacy preserving layers, like Aztec, using ZK proofs. You've got, um, a whole host of use cases, supply chain, um, you know, crypto that can almost be split out into these different uh, different forms. So like a fungible token versus a non-fungible token, where a non-fungible token can take on the properties of being like a verification of something that's off chain, like almost like a title to a home, or like a certificate of authenticity for a Rolex watch, all the way to having fungible tokens that are sort of actual representations of real world assets. It's the blockchain technology underlying it that really enables all these different types of use cases, but um, far greater though than just, I think, crypto alone.
Because I still think that that's also a responsibility, I think, of people in the space is to educate on the difference between those. Because I think everything can get thrown into the umbrella. And then if you have that, and then you have like something like FTX happen, everything just gets negatively impacted by it because no one really knows the difference between, like you say blockchain, and people say, oh, bad because of FTX, when in reality, they're completely separate. Um,
Yeah, the FTX one was funny because it validated wherever perspective you had, it validated your side. So if you were anti-crypto, it was super easy to be able to point to FTX and go, "Yeah, see, crypto, it's just a big scam," and very easy to point to that. It looks terrible. And then if you're for crypto, you do the same exact thing. You go, "Yeah, see, we told you." Centralized systems are a scam, and you point to
right.
FTX, and both are right, but they're both um, both wrong too, I guess, at the same time. I
Yeah,
don't know.
that is interesting. I didn't think about that. So yeah, there was really no net gain for any side. Hmm. Going back a little bit to, I guess, marketing specifically, like
Hmm.
how do you currently measure like the success of a campaign?
Yeah. So I think in crypto broadly, in terms of measurement, everything is so transparent. You have on-chain metrics that you can look at that um, everybody has access to, and I think that ultimately using on-chain metrics and dicing those up in various ways, filtering them, gives you insight into how successful certain campaigns are, how successful certain product is, and it really comes down to how much and how it's being used, and that's based on the various transactions that are happening for a certain protocol or network, um, and then the users as well, like how many people or accounts are actually engaging um, with this product or platform. And so, I like to look at on-chain metrics as a source of truth around success. Um, and then it's just really important, I think, in comparison to competitors, that at least the industry is aligned around what metrics are most important. And so you can have an apples to apples comparison across the board. And I don't know if that's necessarily, um, we're getting closer, but I don't think that everybody's necessarily in agreement on what metrics are the most important metrics to be tracking. And um, as we start to get sort of a better alignment around that, I think it's going to become even easier. Probably Masari is leading the way, I think, in terms of, at least from alignment across the industry. I think they have a really good handle on um, at the market in its current time where the key health and performance indicators are.
I think I've heard of them. Messari, Messari, right?
Yeah, they're a crypto analyst organization. It's almost like the equivalent of like Gartner, um, but for Web3.
Lunar Crush, I think, is also similar, right? Or no? I think they deal with like social
Yeah,
metrics.
yeah, I think they absolutely fall into that same category. It's analysis of the market and of participants in that market, but through the lens of social interaction and interest, and then I think correlating that to like price and some other key metrics. But yeah,
Yeah. I think, yeah, like that kind of goes with what we were saying earlier with like a social, it's almost like the social currency status because it's like they're getting a lot of views or whatever that is. And like the attention economy is going there. Um,
yeah,
yeah, super interesting to, because, yeah, how attention relates to price, I guess, is interesting to me. Um, let's see. Is there anything like what would you say is important to make sure you are doing to stay like ahead of, trends or ahead of the curve or ahead of regulation? Like, are there any things that you implement to make sure, you're always ahead?
I don't think it's impossible, I think, to anticipate any kind of changes that are going to take place. I think there's good reason to sort of be open minded about what could potentially happen, but you'd be spinning your wheels all day just kind of playing the what if game. So, adapting um, to changes as they happen and having the flexibility to do that feels like the most important thing. Um, I think the most important aspect of looking at technological change is a constantly playing with the technology, not just your own technology, but also competitors' technologies, and keeping your ear to the ground on what new things are emerging, what new standards are starting to be talked about, and forming networks with people who are in this space and sharing information that way. So not just sharing information about what you're doing, but also trying to bring in as much information as possible about what's happening out in the world. And I think you become more informed as an individual and also an organization um, when trying to help build the next big thing or ensure that you're adapting to what's coming down the line.
Have you used any kind of like AI stuff in like
Yeah, I
any?
love exploring AI things. Yeah. I don't know if there's I don't see a huge, at least yet, like a huge overlap between the AI and crypto space. There's a lot of people who are trying to do both, because I feel like it's like you're compounding buzzwords, and you'll probably raise a good amount of capital doing
100%.
that, and
Yeah.
get some headlines, but um, not necessarily seeing the exact overlap. Um, but AI is going to be incorporated into everything into the future. I think it's just an evolution of software. So, if you have a Web3 application that's using Web3 as infrastructure and you're providing some sort of service or offering to end users, it's likely that that can be bolstered through the use of AI layered in. Um, and that's the case with any type of application where you can have AI layered in for various purposes, and it just makes the software better.
And I can see that also with what we just talked about, like analytics, I imagine. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
just the,
insights.
yeah, like just the possibility to think of like you said, all the data's on chain. Somehow, I don't know, I'm not a tech guy, so like somehow link that to like AI stuff and be able to ask it questions about the data. Like that in like a normal conversational way. Like that seems like yeah, there can be a lot of value um with that. Um
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And then just things that you miss as a human, you know, you have to be asking the right questions about data in order to derive insights from it. And if you have AI that's looking at that data and then formulating its own questions to ask,
ooh,
questions that maybe you don't, haven't come up with, I think that you can derive a lot of interesting insights from it. And then patterns in the data too that, just aren't humanly possible to be able to make sense of.
yep.
Um, AI could look at that data and find things that we would not be able to.
That you see, but yeah, I agree. But when I think of that, the first thing that comes to my mind is like controlling behavior. with that information? Because, like you said, if we're unaware of why we're doing things and someone can find out kind of why, there seems to be a space to be able to manipulate behavior in a sense, which is
Yeah,
scary.
I think that's true. I mean, it's like, I think at the earlier part of the conversation, you said like if I was like a nefarious sort of person, and I think it's applying these tools in ways that are in the best interest of people, and then maybe we'll start to see some regulation that has to come into play in terms of how these powerful tools can be used to prevent that type of activity. Um, I'm certain, this is like a whole genre of law that's going to emerge from the AI space. They're going to have to figure out.
And then, I mean, right after that, it seems like quantum computing comes next, and then everyone says like none of what we're doing now even matters because quantum computing is going to hack all our keys and everything. It's like I don't, but
Yeah.
you have to somehow find the present moment to continue to work on things because like you can do the what it, like you said, you can talk about like what ifs for days. Um,
Yeah, and I think people in general, I think people have positive intentions for use of the technology. You're always going to have a fringe that wants to use it for nefarious purposes. With with the emergence of the internet, you also have the dark web, um, and that's on the fringe. And but generally, everything that's in the light is a lot of very positive things that have come out of um, the internet, just in general being available and the ability to share knowledge and experiences
yeah,
and everything else.
I like to think that similarly, like yeah, good will win, but evil will
Yeah.
always exist somewhere. But hopefully, like yeah, it can exist over there in the dark web. Um, is there any uh, advice you would give to someone who said, "I want to start a career in marketing and crypto"?
Yeah, I think the best thing that you can do is just take a passionate, keen interest in the space and explore as much as possible and go and meet people in the space. Um, Twitter is probably one of the best, or I guess X now is probably one of the best tools out there in the crypto space or the Web3 space for marketing and making connections. And people are very willing to answer questions, and there's so much going on that platform to be able to learn and engage. And if you pull on the thread of something that you find very interesting, it'll more than likely lead you to a place where um, you can get a job in the space. I think one of the organizations that I really like too is Developer DAO. It's not just for developers. There's people across a whole range of skill sets from marketing and community building, advertising, obviously development, um, products, and getting involved in those types of organizations kind of opens the door to being able to get a job in the space, earn an income from participating in the space, and sort of helping to build out the future of Web3.
And are you a predictions guy? Like if I said, you know, what does the space look like in let's say 2028? You have any
Yeah,
general?
I think everybody, hypothesizes what the future looks like. I think the way that I see it is whenever technologies evolved, um, for something that's as transformational as I believe blockchain and Web3 is going to be, um, you typically have uh, incumbents that are playing around in the space. They're interested in it. They do a lot of proofs of concept. They start to adopt it slowly. Um, but then you also have people who are native to the space, who understand it through and through, who are building business models that are based off of it. And they start to come in and eat the lunch of these larger organizations that are trying to kind of just figure out what it is. And so you'll if you look at the internet, the top four internet companies, Facebook, or I guess Meta now, um, Amazon, Google, Netflix, they um, did not exist before the web came around, and they were complete disruptors to so many industries. And so I think that with this technology, you'll have something similar. So maybe in 20 years, we'll see a Google, Netflix, Amazon um, of Web3 that, they're um, sort of kings and queens of this era. And then you'll obviously have a lot of companies that have to adapt in order to compete.
And those bigger
And
ones
some
might,
are some.
I was just going to
Oh,
say
sorry, go for
I
it.
was just going to say the bigger ones, like you said, might not even have started yet.
Right, yeah. And I think the interesting thing with this technology is, in order to extract its fullest value, I think that the ones who are able to do that are ones that have completely transformational business models. Like, it's a business model that is fully adapted to the technology. And I think it'll be interesting to watch competition happen between the people who are running on business models that are native to the tech versus ones that have their own business models that they have to completely cannibalize their business
Right.
in order to adopt the technology to extract its fullest value to actually compete with these emerging companies or projects or groups.
When you said that, the first thing that I thought of is, yeah, Amazon, like selling books. Like there were bookstores, but they, had the technology of, or they implemented the technology. You can buy it online, and we'll ship it to you. Or Google, um, taking web data, I guess, and like starting with like selling AdWords and all that stuff. But kind of like you said, using the business model that the new tech gives you. Um, Interesting. Because right now it seems like a lot of people are still trying. What do they say? Like they're using Web 2 business models and trying to bring it over to like Web 3. Kind of
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
interesting.
and it doesn't kind of breaks down a bit when you're doing it that way. You're sort of shoving Web3 into a business model that doesn't really work with it. I mean, it's funny. So, like, another one is, Netflix and Blockbuster is probably a good example where it's really easy to look at that and say, well, okay, that makes sense. Blockbuster is brick and mortar. Netflix is digital. The world evolved to digital. I think it's much harder for people to comprehend the gap between Web 2 and Web 3 because it's not such a drastic shift from brick and mortar to digital. It's all digital, but yet I think the delta is the same as Blockbuster to Netflix, if
Mm,
that makes sense.
yeah. Then what is that like? What does that look like? Like, I mean, I guess that's like the winning question is like what is
Yeah,
that
that's
business
definitely
model? But like, is it?
I don't know. Yeah.
I think it has to do with what we talked about. Like, is is being able to give out more pieces of the pie to more individuals, but then the whole pie gets exponentially bigger. Somehow finding a way to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think you're onto something when you say that. It may not necessarily be pieces of the pie in the sense of like an asset that you're giving them, but what you are giving them a greater piece of the pie is of um, the the way in which they have incentive for example, for supplying capital. Like, I want to, I guess I'll use like a specific example, but like if I'm sitting on a number of assets and I want to earn um, some reward for providing those assets to someone for lending and borrowing or for some other type of financial activity, exchanging, swapping, whatever. It's like you can do that with decentralized finance and decentralized technologies. And as the supplier of that capital, you'll earn more through these technologies than you ever would by giving them to an intermediary like a bank who goes and uses that for their own investment purposes or lending or whatever, and they give you barely, any cut. And I think that it sort of brings like more, trying to think of the right word here, but like more ownership of ownership and autonomy of you being able to use your finances in ways that you're sort of giving to a bank to use today. Like we should all be able to have greater ownership and flexibility with trust as like an underlying layer. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I take that and I kind of see, I bring that almost to like the creator world. And I see it similar as like say the supplier is the creator. Like basically somehow Mr. Beast rewards his viewers a small piece of his revenue stream for just like maybe it's proof of viewing, some technology. It might be having to track your eyeballs or something, but like, I don't know, but somehow because you're giving him value by watching his content, his revenue goes up because of your watch time. So maybe a small, uh, uh, I don't know what you call that, but kickback or whatever to like the viewers. Cause I think consumers are equally important in this new economy. Like they're consuming everything and they're the reason why creators are getting rewarded. So I don't know, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
going to
no, I,
be
I agree
obviously
with
be
you.
interesting.
And X is doing that now. I think you're onto something where that business model is new, and something that may be very disruptive as X comes to market with revenue share for ads, where if you're a creator that has 5 million impressions of your content over a 3 month time span, and there's advertisements that are displayed in there, you get cash for doing that. And so
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that's going to evolve, and I'm certain that Web3 will play some role in that as well.
Yeah, but I mean, even I think what I was talking about was was a layer extra because it's not only incentivizing the creator but the consumer. Like almost like streaming. Like if I'm listening, it's almost like paid to listen to music because my listening time is a benefit to the artist who created the song. Again, I don't know
Yeah.
how the tokenomics or anything work, but um, it's like the new gig economy. Instead of having to go drive Uber, you watch YouTube videos or you just
Yeah.
listen to music all day, and you kind of get paid to do that. Um,
Yep. The
like,
attention economy.
yeah, and then I think that heads into, I don't know if you've ever seen Wally, how everyone's just like on a
Yeah.
device watching things. Like it
So
kind of
dystopian.
looks like it leads to that. Yeah, but yeah, I think consumers
Yep.
are the next ones that need to be let in because they're also providing the value with their attention. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that was great. Is there anything else that you want to, any other uh, predictions or any other thing that you'd like to say?
Um, no, not really. I think that covers it mostly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we went pretty far out there. um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I
It's
appreciate
fun though.
you taking the time to sit down and talk with me. Um, do you want to leave? I mean, every podcast asks the question. Do you want to leave your socials for if anyone wants to go uh, look at your exes and basically uh, reward you because if they look at your tweet, you might be able to get payments.
Sure. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at BM Gentile, and on Galaxy also. It's a Web3 creator economy application
Ooh,
that runs on the Hedera network, and you can find me there at Brady.
awesome! I'll actually check that out. Well, again, thank you for taking the time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.